Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 24th episode of the Startup Boston podcast, where I interview founders, investors, and influencers in the Boston startup community to uncover actionable advice and stories from their experiences. I'm your host, Nick Dupuis. Today's guest is Cort Davies, founder of the StartupCMO. Cort first got into online marketing because he recognized the internet as being the next big real estate platform that people were going to need to know how to use and acquire customers on. After helping friends with generating leads for their companies, Cort founded StartupCMO to help those companies that have a marketing budget, but not one that's high enough to help bring someone into the company full time. Cort is also a mentor at MassChallenge and has helped over 50 startups to date. Some of the things we talk about in this episode are where marketers should be focusing their attention, including what people new to marketing waste their time doing, how founders can find product market fit faster, trends he sees happening in digital marketing and how you can take advantage of them, and how to build trust with a potential customer. If you like today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes so you get all the new episodes as soon as they're released right on your podcast app. And as always, you can find the show notes at startupbostonpodcast.com. Enjoy today's episode. Cort, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Nick, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
To get us started here and get us rolling, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. So from a marketing perspective, I started a company in San Diego about 10 years ago called Internet Marketing Inc. We started with about 3 to 5 individuals and grew it pretty big. Actually grew it to about 120 by the time we left. We typically worked with mid-market to larger companies. So that's kind of, where I started from a marketing perspective. I was out in San Diego for about 12 years and I came back to Boston about 2 years ago.
Just out of curiosity, where did you live in San Diego?
I lived in Mission Beach. I was there for a long time. And it's tough to go through those Boston winters. I often think about Mission Beach and playing volleyball and surfing. It's a great place. Maybe I'll go back there when I retire.
I have a couple of friends that live on Pacific Beach.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Just like a block and a half from the ocean.
Spent a ton of my time there.
Yeah. Oh, it's so much fun.
It is the best.
So why the focus on marketing? What was it that attracted you to that?
Great question. So I was in real estate for a long time. In fact, my background is in structural engineering, which I know sounds crazy, but I went through the real estate boom and bust out west. I started a land development company and that really went downhill really quickly. And so in all honesty, I kind of thought to myself, what's the next biggest real estate push? To me, it was the internet. To me, it was having domains and having websites and really kind of building businesses that way. So everything was shifting in that general direction. And in fact, a lot of the real estate business we did was moving from traditional to online. So we really saw a big shift, and I saw a big shift. And I said, well, if online is going to be the next big real estate push, people are going to need to know how to use it, and people are going to really need to know how to generate business. So that's really what interested me about it.
What was it that tied over from real estate to marketing?
Absolutely. There's a few things. My brother actually started a company called Take Lessons, which he started it in, I believe, 2005. And I was an early advisor to that company. In fact, they really couldn't afford to pay me, which was why it was really difficult to work with. But in hindsight, it might have been good to stick with because they have since raised about $30 million. It's a marketplace for music teachers and students. And they kind of connect them, and now it's really gone broad-based, really horizontal in the fact where they're doing, language lessons and computer lessons and things along those lines. So I really got into marketing with them early on, and I really liked it. And then I started learning about SEO and paid search on my own to help generate leads for a friend's business, which was actually this company called Brian Tracy. He's kind of like a Tony Robbins, if you will, but he's a sales trainer. And I worked on the early days of generating leads for this company. So that really is kind of what was the transition. It really got me interested in marketing, hence the agency after that.
So how did you learn all this? Was it just on your own, going out and trying to find resources for it?
Most of it was on my own, and it's interesting because obviously I have an engineering background, and I was very analytics based and key performance driven in what I did. And I said, I looked at marketing. I said, a lot of people think marketing is branding and brand image and things along those lines, and I knew that marketing was going in the direction of measurable results. And I was really interested in that because, from an engineering perspective, I wanted to put numbers to marketing and results to marketing. So that's really how that all kind of ties together. And I really learned it all on my own. I mean, I took some courses, just some online courses, read some ebooks. But from a marketing perspective, really performing some Facebook ads on my own, performing some analytics campaigns on my own, performing some SEO campaigns on my own was really how this all started.
Why did you leave San Diego to come to Boston?
It was because of the startup world, actually. My mentor, who is a professor at Northeastern, teaches entrepreneurial classes there, and he asked me to come and teach with him. So that was really super exciting. Northeastern's my alma mater. I was really excited about the thought of teaching young entrepreneurs. Not to mention the fact that down the road, what really became exciting to me was actually doing the teaching aspect, was actually educating these people how to do marketing.
Yeah.
So that was really what was exciting to me. So I, decided to come back to Boston because there's just a lot more opportunity from a startup perspective here. Yes, the two cities that I was thinking of going to was San Francisco and Boston. And I really picked home because of this is where I'm from. This is where my family is. So there was a little bit of a, family aspect as well.
How long did you teach at Northeastern?
So I still do.
Okay.
So it's every semester. I typically fill in for him for a few classes, and right now we're actually creating a curriculum to create a product market fit and go to market strategy class for Northeastern.
Wow.
So hopefully, eventually, I'll be teaching. I don't want to say full time, but being somewhat of an adjunct professor.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting because these kids are all building businesses and they're all bright eyed and really excited. And I really like that the university's behind that. I think that is one of the most amazing things about Northeastern and universities that are really behind the entrepreneurs and the ventures that they're building.
I interviewed Newgrounds Food.
Of course.
Ali from Newgrounds.
Of course.
And he talked about how supportive Northeastern was.
I'm a mentor of Ali and Johnny.
Awesome.
Yeah, they're great guys.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
So why did you start StartupCMO?
So StartupCMO came from teaching and from working with other startups. So basically what happened is when I came back here, I had a few consulting gigs and basically people were just throwing business at me. They were like, oh, you understand marketing. We're kind of in that position where we have a little bit of funding or we're pre-funded and, maybe we've been working for, 20 years, saved all our money and started a startup, but can afford a certain amount of money a month on marketing. It's really the fact that there's a lot of product centric startups out there that really don't have a good grasp on marketing. And I got that from both the education side at Northeastern, from IDEA, from MassChallenge. I saw a lot of great ideas, but a lot of lack of knowledge in how to implement and to grow and to take it to market and to actually prove out and validate it. So I just saw it. I just saw it building and it just kind of showed itself to me. It was almost like this light going, there needs to be a solution for these companies that are in this limbo phase that, have just launched or are ready to launch to when they can actually afford a marketing team or a VP of marketing. Mm-hmm. And we fit in there perfectly. And that's the sweet spot. That's the companies that I'm most excited to teach.
What are some of the companies that you've helped so far?
So we've helped a company called Flip. Flip is a multiple phone number app. They're based in Boston. They did about 5.5 in their Series A round. Another company called Spatially, which is a spatial technology that helps small businesses find new locations for their growing business. Say you're a yoga studio, you have 5 and you want to open a few more. Well, there's this technology, the data spatial technology that can actually help you find the best spot where your target clients are. So that was really interesting. They're gaining some traction right now. Some other cool companies I worked with. I worked with a company called Forward Force. They're kind of a crowdfunding play, similar to Kickstarter, but very contest based. They're working with a lot of universities and a lot of companies to create contests internally to kind of have engineers and designers and innovators and inventors kind of work off of each other. There's a really interesting company that I'm starting to work with right now called Sentient, and it's a hardware play that's basically going to replace all the, huge racks of servers. Basically, there's a huge efficiency play, a huge energy play, and a huge simplicity play as far as setup is concerned. I think they're going to do huge things. A lot of companies that aren't going to AWS that need an internal infrastructure and hardware. It's very time consuming to set up. It's very expensive, and Sentient kind of solves those problems. And, there's been dozens and dozens at MassChallenge and Northeastern that are really, really cool, like early stage companies that are, doing really well.
What is it that you do with MassChallenge?
So MassChallenge is interesting. I love MassChallenge. I really spend a lot of time there. In fact, I'll be there tomorrow, doing some mentoring with, directly with companies. But as far as programming is concerned, I run the product market fit day for the entire MassChallenge class. So Rachel Speckman over there, who's a great friend of mine, her and I kind of got together and said, product market fit is something that's super, super important. It's something we don't, spend enough time on. And that is really, creating that unique selling proposition, mapping out the persona, validating that product, doing customer interviews, doing research. There wasn't enough of that. And there wasn't enough of that in the beginning. So we did a product market workshop day that was 8 hours. It was all, what are there, 160 companies over there. And it was literally one of the most touted presentations that MassChallenge has done. And now what we really want to do is incorporate that worldwide into all their locations. Hopefully, next year, the year after, I'll be able to, travel to the UK, travel to, Mexico City, travel to Israel and do it there. I think for now, we'll probably, teach them remotely or teach the trainers how to do it. But I'm super involved in MassChallenge and kind of getting those startups up to speed as soon as the class launches, which is what I love.
What are some things that you've helped some of these startups achieve so far to date?
A lot of it is, obviously getting customer acquisition, lead generation. When it comes down to it, there's the pain points of the companies when they come to me is basically getting traction and growing. And you really need to get traction and grow to the fact where if you do need to go out and raise money, you can have that kind of actionable data. So I'd say that my big things are, from a product market fit perspective, there's a lot of early stage strategy where we help build interview questions. We help do research. We help go out and actually validate the product and find the target persona. Because without knowing the target persona, marketing doesn't work. And I don't want to say marketing doesn't work, but marketing's a lot harder unless you know exactly who you're going after. And then we want to translate that into a go-to-market strategy, aka picking the one or two channels where your target persona is really going to live, and you want to go after them. And again, I think that the most difficult thing for product-centric, founders is that they really want to go broad-based with marketing. They want to try everything when, as the most efficient things to do is to stay really narrow and to, only launch with one or two channels, kind of be very systematic about that. And then if those channels don't work, or if one channel doesn't work, move on. But if one channel really works, you want to double or triple down on those channels because, that's where the momentum is coming. So I'd say that, doing anything from creating a huge pre-launch list, 1,000, 2,000 emails, creating, very, very inexpensive leads or downloads where it comes to apps or software, things along those lines. And again, the progress is taking it from, launch to handing them off to, either the venture capitalist who's going to hire a VP of marketing, or I help them hire internally.
So rather than being broad and focusing on many different channels, just focus on one or two and see if you can get those to work. And
Correct.
if you can't get those to work, then to move on.
Correct.
To some of the other ones. Absolutely.
And the, the term growth hacking is it's funny. It's a term that I have in my LinkedIn profile, but it makes me cringe because it's a catchy term, and it essentially means be tactical, but don't think long term from a strategy standpoint. These are all fads that are all going to fade out. And a lot of the things that, the companies have tried, like for instance, the Airbnb one, Airbnb, hacked Craigslist, and Craigslist has come onto that, and they're smart. So no other companies can do what Airbnb did, and Airbnb, bravo, good for them. They did that. But the fact of the matter is a lot of the growth hacks that are being done are not replicatable. So, we really need to be able to create replicatable marketing strategies that can work. I don't want to say long-term because a lot of the time startups don't have long-term, but short long-term.
By replicatable, you mean they can do it many times?
Correct.
Instead of just having to do it once?
And not to mention the fact that we can build them a system. So if you think about a growth hack could be, one campaign. If we find a good channel that can continuously feed us, but that one growth hack is gonna, the lifespan is gonna be really short. And some can be very explosive. I mean, I think Dropbox got 68,000 emails before they launched. But that was a long time ago. And they started very narrow. They said, they launched and there was a very simple landing page. It was really cool. It was a sales letter. There was a signature at the bottom of it. It was like, we're only letting 500 people on here. You get 100 free megabytes of storage. And then that kept on proliferating. They send an email to those 100 people and say, if you invite 100 more people, they're going to get X amount of storage. And it's, and it just grew and proliferated. But again, we read these stories and we go, okay, we can try this stuff. But the fact of the matter is that's been tried a zillion times since then. So I'm not saying it's not a good idea. And I'm saying it shouldn't be considered. But we have to remember that there are more products than ever launching right now.
What are some of your favorite newer strategies that you find that are really working for companies?
Sure. That's a great question. Again, it all has to do with the product market fit, and it has to do with what your go-to-market strategy is, right? And it all depends on who the target customer is. I mean, that's everything. Again, who we are actually focused on, what the target customer is. So influencer outreach has been a really great strategy, and that's thinking about your target consumer, thinking about the persona that you drew out for the company, and thinking about where those people live online. Okay, where do they live online and even offline in some perspectives? What we do is we approach those influencers that actually talk to that target persona. And it's never a, hey, what's in it for me? It's always in a, how can we help that influencer provide more value to their customers? And if we can do that, if we can find a way to provide more value to their customers, then it's potentially a home run. And secondarily, if there's a profit share involved, that could be awesome as well. Second, partnerships and channels are huge. Partnerships are something that not enough companies are considering from a marketing perspective. Think about a business-to-business company that has a target persona. Think about that target persona is some kind of executive at a company. There are dozens and dozens of companies out there that already work with that target consumer. So we need to figure out how to actually take that product and service and actually add it to that other existing partner or channel to add more value to their product or service. Again, we have a lot more to lose on our side than they do. They're an established company potentially, right? But if you massage it and kind of create that relationship over time, it could be a home run for you. Because again, I don't want to say it's free marketing, but they are already talking to and servicing your target persona. So that's really the way you want to think about marketing. And then Facebook advertising is still a home run. It's something that a lot of companies still kind of, there's still that question mark about Facebook advertising, but Facebook advertising can be very inexpensive and it can be very effective, especially for things like consumer products and apps. So, that stuff together, is really effective. So what we typically do is, from a product market fit perspective, figure out who we go after and, based on the target persona, like Sentient, for instance, is a hardware play. And, we really want to talk to the VP of infrastructure, the VP of IT, or the DevOps people. So that's going to be a more direct approach in the beginning because, our goal is to place a certain amount of boxes in, a certain amount of hardware in companies to get tested. So it's going to be more of a marketing and biz dev play together, aka the marketing is going to create the sales collateral and all the assets, and we're going to help business development connect the dots. So marketing can be a lot of different things.
So when you're trying to build out go-to-market strategy, what does that process look like?
It's a pretty standardized process. We kind of like to keep it simple so we can teach it and replicate it. Essentially what we do is we take the product market fit side, which is, again, your unique selling proposition, your persona, your interview questions, your research, your validation, even your monetization plan. Like, I want to know that. Like, I want to know that that's all kind of in place. It doesn't have to be perfected, but we're going to base that go-to-market strategy on that. And then we're going to look at the three sections of the sales and marketing funnel, the top, the middle, and the bottom. And we're going to start at the top with brand awareness. So we're going to think about the channels that we think, based on the target persona we have, will bring the best awareness to our product or service. And then the middle is that consideration phase. How is our website going to talk to them? How is our app going to talk to them? How's our landing pages going to talk to them? How's our email campaigns going to talk to them? And then the decision phase is helping nurture the buyer, analyzing the buyer intent based on interaction with the brand. And then obviously the decision phase is that purchase. If it's a business to business transaction, does the sales guy have to get on the phone and do a presentation? Or maybe it's a low price SaaS software where there's a checkout or a purchase. Do we give 3 price variations? Do we test those price variations? Things along those lines. So the go-to-market strategy really starts with product market fit and then going through the funnel, actually kind of creating that. And then at the end of that, what we do is we establish our goals, 3, 6, 12-month goals, and then the KPIs, the key performance indicators, your cost per acquisition, your cost per lead, your conversion rate. But we stay simple. So we want to really stay simple so that we're able to test out our hypothesis and our theory on the top of the funnel, and then kind of, restructure that. And essentially, we're going to optimize each part of it, starting with the top. So if the channels aren't working at the top, we're going to optimize the channels. If the conversion's not working in the middle, either we're talking to the wrong customers, the wrong channels, or our messaging's off. Or if no one's buying, then, the whole thing could be, reinvented from a product market fit perspective. I know that seems a little, kind of roundabout, but if you see it visually, it makes a lot of sense.
And if one of those pieces of the funnel is broken, say, then it could throw the whole thing off,
Correct.
right? You won't make it to the end.
And I really want the founders to see the funnel, because it's something that they should have on their wall in front of them at all times. They should have a picture of their persona, and they should have a picture of their sales and marketing funnel. And if it needs to be changed, that's fine. But they have to come into wherever they are, work, office, at home, and see their persona up on the wall every single day and know who their customer is. And they also need to see the process of how to actually acquire that customer. And again, remember, the sales and marketing funnel, you can get a lot of information out of there too, because in the middle of the funnel and in the bottom of the funnel, we can do surveying. We can do things that can help us modify the product. Because remember, we're not selling the product. We're not selling the features. We're selling the results. And that's really something that I try to get, into the head of these startup founders. We're not selling your product at all. It's the result that your product gives. It's the way that you make the consumer feel. It's the way that you make their life easier. Remember, entrepreneurs are problem solvers.
If the funnel isn't working, how do you know if it's a segment of the funnel that needs to change or the persona that you're going after that needs to change?
That's a really good question. So essentially what we do is we start from the top. This might not be the right channel to start with, okay? We're not getting enough traffic, enough impressions, enough things along those lines, right? So we start by, changing around advertising, changing around verbiage, things along those lines. If we find that the top is not working, then there's something wrong with our messaging, or there's something wrong with the persona. And by the way, if there's something wrong with the persona, it tends to be a pretty big shift in marketing. Yeah. And what I tell companies to do is I say commit to your persona at least for 3 months. Give it 3 months. Don't do it overnight. Don't change overnight just because, something's not working. But if the top part of the funnel is getting impressions and clicks, and there's interest, you can tell that you're talking to the right persona. And from the middle and the bottom perspective, if those aren't being, if the conversions aren't happening, it's just because your messaging is off. Things need to be testing, your pricing's off, your value adds off, things along those lines. So the top of the funnel is really going to tell you if you're talking to the right persona or not.
If you think it's the persona that needs to change, would you then continue with the persona that you have, but also start advertising or marketing to a slightly tweaked persona to see if you're getting better results?
I would advise against that.
Okay.
I would say don't ever market to 2 personas, but companies tend to not listen to me. And in fact, there's been a lot of cases where we have marketed to 2 personas. It makes data analyzing a lot more difficult. I think we need to exhaust that one persona. And again, 3 months is a lot of time for startups sometimes. So they might not have the time. But I think that we need to make sure that we're putting in the effort to actually properly test out that persona. Because all of a sudden, if we get a persona that's interested in our product and service, but they're not converting at the bottom, and our old persona would have converted at the bottom, they just needed a little more trust and a little more brand recognition and a little more nurturing, well, then we've completely changed the emphasis of the product. We got to be really careful with that, because different personas need to be talked to very differently. And we're talking changing the website verbiage. We're talking about changing email campaigns. We're talking about changing everything, So you got to be really careful with that.
If you're getting everyone through the funnel, but they're just not converting, what are some of the things that could be causing the conversion problem at the end?
Sure. So typically, there's typically one reason why they won't convert. And that's typically because you haven't presented them with enough evidence that the risk that they are taking is worth the investment. That's really what it comes down to. It's a risk on their side to work with a company that they're not familiar with the name. If you think about it, a lot of this is going to happen in the beginning. And you could say this for any, unknown startup that became well known. I'm assuming that in the early days of Uber, there was a lot of people didn't trust getting into other people's car, but over time it worked, which is why, it took a good amount of time for them to ramp up, and which is why they have to spend a lot of money on marketing. Lyft the same way. The reason they do it is because they need brand trust. Consumers need to know that brand's going to be around for a while and that it's trustworthy. So it really all has to do with trust and really convincing the consumer that there is little risk involved with the transaction. And that's really what it comes down to. And if you go through the product funnel and you go through your checkout, for instance, here's a really good example. Say you're a nice to have software or nice to have kind of high ticket item for business to business, and you want to charge $2,000 for installation, but you're not proven out. You don't have many customers. Well, that's a friction point right there, right? Why charge $2,000 to a company for a nice to have? That's for a CFO, that's a no brainer. This is nice to have, but I don't need to pay $2,000 up front. There's too much risk, right? But if it's free installation and free first month, well, then you just took away a lot of friction, right? So you made that transaction a lot easier to happen. So in those cases, startups really need to be willing to bring on free clients, willing to cut incentives in the beginning, willing to get those, testimonials and case studies. They got to put their, money where their mouth is, if you will, right? And that's what makes it difficult is a lot of startups want to start charging too soon. Again, they kind of freak out and go, well, no one's buying. And the reason no one's buying is because there's no trust in that brand and there's no recognition. They don't know you well enough. And you have not proven to them that what you're selling is not risky to them.
Does reducing friction increase trust?
It does. It definitely does. Reducing friction increases the likelihood that you're going to make it easier on them. Again, friction's a huge thing. And in fact, I feel like I could write a book on friction. I feel like it's something that holds back a lot of startups. They kind of think to them, and by the way, this is basically the lack of ability to have empathy for your target consumer, right? The lack of ability to actually get into the shoes of your target customer and say, well, if I was sitting here and I was presented with this offer, what would I think? What are the risks that I'm gonna take? What is my company going to think about? What are my executive team going to think about the fact that I'm taking this risk on this company that has zero track record? They have no case studies. There's no real proof. Yeah, sure, they have a nice website. Friction is huge. And again, with the amount of products and services launching, I truly believe that sales and marketing is going to become even more important as we go on now because of companies needing to differentiate themselves from all the different competitors that are coming out right now. I mean, there's, competitors are a dime a dozen. So friction does increase trust, but what it really does is it makes it easier for them to make the decision. And that's important.
So over the last 5 years, you've helped over 50 tech companies. Is that the number right?
Yeah. Probably more at this point, actually. With mentoring and stuff like that. Yeah.
So what would you say for people new to marketing, they struggle to understand the most about marketing?
I think it's product market fit. I think that most companies don't go through the process of validating their product. The statistic that I'll lean on, I think it comes from Fortune magazine, says that 90% of startups fail, and the number one reason they fail is because no one wants their product, or they built a product that no one wants. I believe that a lot of entrepreneurs are really running on the high of their friends and their family telling them how good their idea is. Mm-hmm. And it's false hope because you're not really talking to your target customer. I mean, maybe some of them are your target customer, but there's also a bias towards you, right?
Yeah.
So product market fit is far and away the most important thing in marketing and in your product for that matter, because if you're not doing that upfront research, those interviews, the customer, kind of interaction, you don't know, what the potential is going to be. You don't know if someone's going to buy your product or service. You don't know if it's a need. You don't know if it's actually a pain point that you're actually, you're actually getting rid of. Because remember, when it comes back to it, entrepreneurs are problem solvers, and they get problem solvers and they get paid to solve problems. If you build this great product with all these bells and whistles, it costs, $500 and you're not solving anyone's problem. It's just going to gather dust on the shelf or sit in your garage.
Yeah. What are some things that people who are new to marketing tend to waste their time on? What are the things that they are focusing on that they shouldn't be?
Well, growth hacking is certainly one of them, and that's finding the secret bullet, the shortcut. I love Seth Godin. I really love him. I love his books. I love his blogs. I read his blogs every day. And Seth is very big into, strategy over tactics and long-term thinking over short-term thinking. And that shortcuts are always shortcuts, and shortcuts will always expire, meaning that, a lot of people got to the top of their game because they found a hack. And then when they teach that hack's not replicatable.
Uh-huh.
So there's a lot of time wasted on that. There's also a lot of time wasted on believing and thinking that because you have an outstanding product or service, that your product or service will go viral instantaneously. Leaning on virality is a really big mistake that I see a lot of companies make. People who are just going to find us is what I've heard over and over and over again. And you can't just sit and play the waiting game. You have to be proactive in marketing. You have to get out there. And marketing and sales is going to become exponentially harder the next 5 to 10 years. So again, it's you have to be proactive. Wasting time on, thinking you're going to go viral or going through those growth hacks, trying to find the next hack that's going to get you to a certain point. Typically, 99% of the time, it's a waste of time.
You said sales and marketing has become a lot harder over the next 10 years. Why is that?
Because of the amount of companies being invested in, because the amount of products being, products launching. I mean, think about places like WeWork where we are. These places are popping up like crazy. What does that mean? That just means that there's more and more startup companies, and it's not going to stop, And with more and more startup companies, there's going to be more and more failures. But with more and more startup companies, there's also going to be more and more competition. So how do you differentiate yourself from the competitor next door? You're going to have to continuously think about that, because again, if your business just becomes a commodity and it's just based on price, then what fun is that? What fun is, getting in a business where you have to undercut and your profit margin gets smashed? Like, you want to be the best at what you do. You want to be outstanding.
So don't focus on growth hacking.
Sure.
Where should you focus instead?
Like I said, product market fit, validation, customer interviews, just getting as much research as possible. Finding out, where your customers live, finding out how they kind of do research online. I'd say being empathetic to your target customer is probably one of the most important traits that I would think any company would have. Waking up every single morning, looking at that persona going, how do I get into their shoes? What are they thinking about? And how do I solve their problems and services? Because again, I think it was Warren Buffett who said it, but, be really, really good at what you do and the money will follow. Like, I truly believe in that.
I agree with you there. What are some trends you see happening in the digital marketing space, and how can people take advantage of that?
So again, trends, whether they be negative or positive. I think, like I said, I think the negative trend, I think growth hacking is a negative trend. I think it's giving entrepreneurs false hope. I just think that they need to be more strategic. I think some positive trends are that a lot of the, display networks, and let's just say there's a lot of minutia out there that are coming to fruition and that really aren't that effective, and that, the old standbys, the old kind of standalones, the AdWords, the Facebook, doing social media, those are really still, pretty strong. Is there going to be new methods for marketing? Sure. But think about it this way. Less and less people are watching TV, which means display advertising and video advertising are going to explode even more than they are right now. So if you think about that ad revenue shifting from television to online, where is it going to go? And again, it's going to be display advertising, which are, static images or dynamic images, or videos. So videos are going to be bigger than they are right now, because the eyeballs have to go somewhere. When the eyeballs shift from television, they're gonna come to, come online. And here's another thing that's really difficult with online, and that's content marketing and just creating content is becoming less and less effective because people are making it so general. So now content marketing has to be very niche. It has to be very specific, talking to a specific, target, specific audience. And that's how our world is getting. So it's that inch wide, mile deep thought process of getting as niche as you possibly can in the beginning to talk to those customers, because there are 50 other, bloggers or 50 other, people doing content on the same exact thing. Who do you choose? How do you get above and beyond? Well, you have to differentiate yourself.
So focus once again. Like
Focus. Totally.
I want to move now into our rapid fire questions.
Sure.
It's rapid fire questions, not necessarily rapid fire answers. First question, you told me beforehand that you might not have an answer for this, but we'll see if you came up with something. What's another startup in Boston that you're most excited about?
Oath Pizza is one that comes to mind. And I don't know if you've heard of them.
I've had it.
You have?
Yes.
And it's super interesting to me. And I like it because it's simple. I actually had a background back in California of attempting to start a healthy fast food franchise. It was something that was really passionate to me. But I like the fact that it's a pizza that's made in 90 seconds, right? And I believe that from a franchisee or from a new location standpoint, they don't have to build out a full kitchen. There's a lot less cost involved. There's a lot less permitting involved. So it's almost like a really, really efficient run franchise. And by the way, what's the biggest franchise in the world? Subway. Subway's built like that too. There's no kitchen. There's just a microwave. It's a very easy put together, turnkey solution.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's scalable.
Yeah.
Interesting. I wouldn't have thought of
very scalable.
a restaurant that way.
Yep. And it's funny because I work with tech companies and I saw Oath Pizza and I was like, oh, these guys are onto something.
Yeah.
These guys are onto something.
What's something about you that most people don't know?
Oh, man. When I was 7 years old, I got electrocuted. I touched a power line. And I have a hole in my foot the size of a silver dollar where the electricity escaped. And I have a really nasty scar and the big toe on my right foot doesn't work. And I actually fell out of the tree that I was in. I didn't know the power line was there. And I supposedly died. And the branch at the bottom of the tree caught me and started my heart up again, supposedly.
Wow.
Yeah. I know. That's a story that...
that's a crazy story.
I know. When I take my shoe off at the beach, people are like, whoa. But...
so you didn't go after the power line. You just didn't know it was there.
Didn't know it was there, yeah. I was 7 years old. It is the earliest memory that I have. And it's because I think everything earlier was erased by the electricity.
God, wow. What are some of your favorite tools that help make your work and life easier?
Oh my gosh, I have so many good tools I love. I have this app called Habit List. I really love it. Habit List essentially kind of takes me through the things I like to get done on a daily basis. Like, for instance, I do meditation. I do these things called incantations, which are essentially affirmations, but with a lot of emotion. I like to exercise daily. I like to drink 80 ounces of water a day. I like to call a friend every single day and tell them how much I'm grateful for them being in my life. I like to laugh every single day. These are things I kind of put on my habit list of really kind of designing that great day. There is another app I have used called Gtask. Gtask came from the Getting Things Done methodology, which I like. Mm-hmm. And it's just kind of this fun little task checklist thing that I have on my phone that I use. I think the thing that I like the most is I have a time management program that I use from Tony Robbins called Rapid, Purposeful, Massive Action Plan. And it's something that was designed in the late 90s, but essentially what it does is uses the 80-20 rule, which I really love. And that's, what are 20% of the things that are creating 80% of your results? And I design my days and weeks based on it. And it's a really incredible platform. And I've taught a lot of entrepreneurs about it, and they can double their productivity with the snap of a finger. And I really like it. I really felt like a lot of us are task list and to-do list driven, and I can't stand that. Like, what's more stressful than looking at a to-do list with 100 items on it? There's not. Mm-hmm. So RPM, it's Tony Robbins. It's absolutely one of the greatest things ever.
Do you use a meditation app?
I use Calm,
mm-hmm.
and I do guided meditation with Deepak Chopra. Sometimes I just do some, a silent meditation on my own.
I use Headspace.
Yeah, Headspace is awesome.
And I interviewed Ben Rupin also from 10% Happier.
Cool.
He has the app as well. What are some of your favorite blogs or books?
I mean, Tim Ferriss is probably one of my favorite people in the world. I love him, and I love his podcast is, his podcast is literally incredible. And what kills me about that guy is just how incredible he is. How he went into that podcast going, this is going to be, no big deal. And I think he has like 60 million listeners now. It's like, it's literally insane.
That was the first podcast I ever listened to.
Oh, and it's probably the best podcast. And his blog's incredible. And Tony Robbins is probably one of my favorite people in the world. I see him pretty often. I go see him once or twice a year. His blogs and podcasts are absolutely amazing. HubSpot's blog is really good from a marketing perspective. I read a lot of books. I'm really big into books. Jay Abraham is someone that comes to mind who's a marketing guru. I'm not sure if you heard of him.
Yeah, I listened to him on, I think, the Tony Robbins podcast.
He's incredible.
He was on that one.
Jay Abraham is incredible, and he is a marketing genius, that guy. It's crazy that more people don't teach what he teaches. It's so simplistic, but yet so effective. And I use a lot of his methodologies for sure.
What about books?
4-Hour Workweek is something that really inspired me. Awaken the Giant Within is probably one of my favorite books. That's Tony Robbins. I think that at one time I probably have about 100 different books on my audible.com. I'm really big into listening. Dr. Joe Dispenza, The Placebo Effect is something I'm really into right now. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's really, really interesting. It's a Hay House book, kind of along the lines of Tony Robbins. It really goes into the effect where, you come into an office and half the people are sick, and there's actually a placebo effect that makes it more likely that you get sick, and then you actually bring that sickness onto yourself by seeing and experiencing other people being sick. It is so super interesting. A lot of triple blind studies where 20 people have colitis and they give half the people with colitis a placebo and half the medication, and the people with the placebo get better. It's really incredible.
Yeah.
But they were told that it's a medicine that helps them.
Yeah.
So it's just the power of the brain and the power of the body. Power of Habit is a great book.
Yep.
Really good book. So many good books. I like a lot of Brian Tracy stuff. I like a lot of Jay Abraham stuff. I'm big into that. I'm big into that kind of, making my day more powerful and happier and kind of, things along those lines.
Yeah. What advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
Well, I wasn't 20 too long ago. What advice would I give? I'll tell you what advice I give. I would tell my 20-year-old self to be really, really, really good at one thing. I think that when I was younger, I was interested, and it's okay to be interested in tons of things, but I think I was the master of none, if you will. And again, at 20, you're not really going to be the master of anything, but going back to books, Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, the 10,000 hour rule, where, he kind of says that it takes 10,000 hours to really create, perfection and expert, the Tiger Woods of the world, the, master chess players, the master tennis players, the master cellists, Bill Gates, Bill Gates' story is awesome in that book. How, when he was younger, he got access to a computer when he was 13 years old. I mean, it was just a perfect equation, right? And you don't realize how much experience he had with computers when he got to college. I mean, he had already been at probably at 10,000 hours. I'd say really, really getting passionate and really being an expert at something. And by the way, that doesn't necessarily mean business. It could mean playing guitar. It could mean playing golf. It could be just being an expert. And I think that I kind of flailed around for a long time kind of searching for that because I maybe didn't know the equation. And I really do think there is an equation. I really do think that there's a purpose behind that.
Just a couple last questions here to close out.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is, where can people find out more about StartupCMO?
Sure. So our website is StartupCMO.io. All the information is on there that they need, and pretty simple.
And where can people connect with you online?
They can connect with me on the website itself. They can email me at Cort, C-O-R-T, at StartupCMO.io.
And last question, do you have any parting thoughts, advice, or suggestions for the people listening?
I'd say that the biggest parting advice I can give is that it may not be sexy to do research and interviews and really validate your product, but you're going to increase the percentage of being successful. You're going to create your percentage of being successful. It's just going to grow exponentially the more and more research and the more and more understanding you have about your target customer. And like I said before, I think it's learning to be empathetic and learning to live in the shoes of your target customer and treating them like a customer and not as a transaction. I think that's going to be absolutely huge. So,
Cort, thank you so much for doing this today.
Nick, thanks so much for having me, buddy.
If you liked today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. You'll get all my new episodes as soon as they're released right on your podcast app. And if you really liked today's episode, it would mean a lot to me if you could write a review of the podcast as well. Just go to startupbostonpodcast.com/iTunes. And remember, you can find all show notes with links at startupbostonpodcast.com. Until next time, if you have any feedback, ideas for guests, or just want to say hi, you can reach me at nic@startupbostonpodcast.com or reach out on Twitter at startupbosscast. That's startup BOS cast. Cheers.